It wasn't the Supreme Court that issued a ruling. It was one justice, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Because what happens is each of the justices are assigned to a particular circuit. So when an emergency petition or request comes up, what they're calling the shadow docket, comes up, one justice is going to sometimes enter a ruling. And it's not a substantive ruling. It was an administrative stay. This has happened quite a number of times.
Yeah.
And what was certainly surprising to so many people was, particularly when you learned that it was Justice Jackson, who is probably the most liberal of the justices on the bench of the 9, that she would undermine conceptually the funding going to the SNAP program. The best way I can explain this, I've been working on this. Because I was listening to constitutional colleagues as they explained it, and I understood what they were talking about, but it's convoluted, complicated procedural aspects in dealing with the Supreme Court. I have the best way, I think, to make the larger listening audience understand, and that's Avengers Infinity Wars. Explains the whole thing. And for those who hopefully are fellow comic book aficionados, at least by way of the movies, when Thanos was over, I think, was it a moon of Saturn? I'm forgetting where they were, where he was fighting Spider-Man and Iron Man, and he almost killed Tony Stark. And Doctor Strange gave him, Thanos, the Time Stone, right? He's trying to bring together all the Infinity Stones, and they all know once he gets all 6, as I recall, he's going to destroy half the universe, quadrillion, supertillion people, whatever the number is, right? And everyone's freaking out. Why would Doctor Strange voluntarily, just to save one person, Tony Stark, that was the deal, why would he do that? Well, it was because he had seen the future, and that the only pathway to defeating Thanos in the long term was to give him the Time Stone now, out of all of the options. And what Justice Jackson did was actually pick the pathway that would enable the First Circuit Court of Appeals, the level below them and above the district judge who had put in the order, to rule substantively on this case far quicker than any other pathway. It was actually designed, even though it appears incongruent, if I'm using that word correctly.
You are.
Big words. Even though it appears that it doesn't make sense and is uncaring and things like that, it was actually the best move to try and get the funding to the SNAP recipients as quickly as possible, in the hope there will be a favorable legal ruling. And of course, as I finish this, switching back to politics, the administration, of course, could find ways, as it did with trying to pay the military, find ways to feed the hungry children in our country. And instead, as you mentioned in the opening, the Trump administration over the weekend directed states to pull back all funding to any of these nutritional assistance programs. So that is going to be the legacy of one of this administration's. So Infinity Wars explains Justice Jackson. Don't panic, folks.